Alright, here we go. And we're gonna call this segment Across the Desk. I don't know, working title. We're gonna work on them. But, what the whole goal is, by the way, I am Lon. L-A-N-N, Lon. The whole goal is to give you guys an overview of the different weapon types and the different damage types. Alright, so yes, I have my inventory screen up and there's a lot of junk. Let me get you some info that we can get started. We'll start with the different weapon types. In the energy weapon department, we have the dual beamback, the beam array. We have the turrets, the cannon, the dual cannons, and the dual heavy cannons. We have phasers, tetryon, this should be polaron, and then plasma, disruptors, and anti-proton. And then there's also torpedoes and mines. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of tactics with them, but just a quick overview. Generally speaking, alright, we also, excuse me, I skipped over this. This is the omnidirectional beam array. They're kind of rare. There's a couple of them out there. They're one of two weapons that fires completely around your ship. As you can see, it does say somewhere that it has a right click info. All your info is on there, and it has a 360 firing arc. Very, very important. You see your damage and a bunch of other different things. Me personally, I run with anti-proton dual heavy cannons, and then I have a turret and one or two omnidirectional beam arrays in the back. If not, I usually have. Here, let me just show you. Sorry, not well organized, and it is 1 o'clock in the morning. So, some appreciation for Slack would be appreciated. My current setup for my flagship, the USS Cortana, is I have 4 fleet, advanced fleet anti-proton dual heavy cannons. Very nice, very costly. I have the advanced fleet anti-proton turret in the back, this omnidirectional beam array, and depending on what I want, I'll swap out the tractor beam for the Borg kinetic cutting array, this Vadar cluster torpedo for the Borg torpedo thing, and then I'll put in the universal console, the assimilated console. But we'll get into that second. Let me focus here, please. Alright. Generally speaking, we'll do damage types. So you got the anti-proton, and generally anti-protons do get a bonus to crit severity, as in the crits are more severe, more serious, as in they do more damage. Blah. So because that's the bonus they get, they also tend to do more upfront damage. If you look, we compare the anti-proton will do 203 burst damage. 210 burst damage versus the disruptor, which does 228. Now you're saying that's more, but my dual disruptor here is a rank higher. Let's see, we'll compare. There you go. They're actually this. You go down to the dual heavy cannon. Excuse me, the dual cannon and the dual disruptor cannons. They do the same damage. The difference, though, is they do the crit severity, so more better crits versus a 2.5 chance to do minus all 10 damage resistance. You negate some resistance, or you can do more critical. I find the criticals are a little more dependable than the procs from the other weapon types, but that doesn't mean they're not good. It really comes down to which you would prefer. So, better criticals, damage resistance, plasma gives damage over time. Polaron's fun. Polaron will lower the power levels of your enemy ships for 5 seconds. Why is that fun? Well, the lower their power levels, the weaker the ships. You lower their power levels down enough on their weapons, and you lower their overall DPS drastically. You lower the power levels on the shields, and you cut their shield strength in half. Engines will stop them from moving, and depending what auxiliaries for, which I'm not actually 100% sure. There are some weapons that are dependent on auxiliary. There are some things, the special weapons that will depend on their auxiliary powers. So you can negate them and cut it all out. Tetrions are great for busting through shields because there's a chance it'll damage all the shields no matter which side you're hitting. And then phasers are fun just because they'll flat out disable a subsystem. Weapons, shields, engines, auxiliary. Just flat out disable them. Now the beam arrays here are probably the most common weapons to be used. They do decent damage for their damage types, and they have the second biggest firing arcs. As in, you can have anti-proton. You can have a beam array in the front and the back, and it will cover your whole ship. So if you fly up next to someone and you literally parallel with them, you will hit them from the front and the back from both beam arrays. So if your ship is like mine, and you have 3 weapon slots in the back and 5 in the front, theoretically, you can hit them with 8 weapons at the same time. This is not suggested, but it could be done. Why is this not suggested? For every additional weapon you're firing, it puts a drain on your power levels. So it lowers the power levels. My ship here, one of its features is being able to increase the regeneration rate of those power levels. I can do attacks, or shields, or engines. Well, weapons, not attacks, but it's the same thing. So I have an easier time firing my 4 cannons here, and my missiles whenever I can, plus the beam array and the turret in the back. Could I optimize this better? Yes. I am by no means the god at any game, but I do have quite a bit of experience. So, but as a comparison, we can show you turrets do the least amount of damage, but they also have a 360-degree firing arc. Up until they started introducing the omnidirectional arrays, they were the only weapons that had a 360 firing arc. Following under the beam weapon categories, and not the cannon, is obviously the beam dual ranks. These are equal in some ways to cannons, but still considered beam weapons. They fire a continuous beam shot where cannons are small balls of death. So, but as you can see, info, you can see right here, minus 10 weapon power and firing other weapons. If we were just firing this, it wouldn't have, wouldn't matter. But if you were fighting this and something else, this one's going to hit you for -10 weapon power, which regenerates pretty quick. But when you start firing all your weapons, it adds up quickly. Um, sorry. So, going to verse the different damage types, I tend to favor the anti-proton. I find that overall that does better damage, and although in a PvP aspect it's probably predictable, most people I haven't done a lot of PvP, but most people either do anti-proton or probably plasma for the DOT, because it just generally they do the most damage. If I were doing PvP, would use the Polaron for the power levels, or the phasers for the disabling the subsystems. If you're flying a team ship, Tetrion here might be more useful because it'll help everyone else take out the shields and fire from multiple angles faster. Alright, kind of arrange stuff. So we've got the cannons. Now, the turrets here, they fire in a complete circle. The cannons, though, the single cannons, will fire in 180 degrees. That's from left to right, either front or back. Generally, cannons only go on the front of your ship, so you always have to be facing your target, which is kind of standard for most games. You don't normally, or you're going to be backing into them or some such. But so it's habit. Cannons are also nice because there are very few ships they can't go on. If you look at the info by right-clicking and go to info, you can see it doesn't list any ships that it can't be equipped to. Dual cannons, I believe, are also the same. No, I'm wrong. Excuse me. Dual cannons have to be attached to the escorts, and then you've got the dual heavy cannons, which can go to warbirds, and all the escorts flagged ships too, which would be the battlecruiser, the carrier, the destroyer, the dreadnoughts, cruisers, escorts, carriers, fighters, light cruisers, multi-mission science vessels, raptors. It's all there. Check what you have. Run with it. My two main suggestions: either pick a damage type or a weapon type and roll with it. I prefer a damage type. So all I need, buff-wise, go over here, is my anti-proton mag regulator, and all my anti-proton weapons get a flat bonus. That stacks. There's probably a diminishing return. I haven't done the math. That's something I just don't get motivated to do very often. But I know the overall damage is higher using 4 mags than something that's just generic cannons. I could in theory use 4 pre-fire chambers, and then I could use each weapon type. And this makes all weapon cannons better. From the turret, the dual heavy turrets are all flagged as cannons, so you would need a pre-fire chamber if you had multiple damage types. If you have the same damage type but multiple weapons, then you could go with the damage type buffing, ones which do more, generally speaking, to start with. Equal wise, if you can see, this is blue and this is blue, and they are both rank 11. The mag regulator gives 26.2 damage bonus, where the pre-fire chamber gives 17.5. But this will do every cannon. So I could have one turret of every damage type, and the pre-fire chamber would buff them all. But the mag regulator would only do the anti-protons. And there are specific turrets or regulators for each damage type. There are also generic warhead yield chambers which buff torpedo damage, and then there are specific warhead chambers or warhead consoles that buff specific warhead torpedoes. There are a variety of torpedo damage, including plasma and photon, and a couple others that I just didn't get involved into. If I have got requests about it, I will bring it up, but this is what I have. Then there's the mines, and we can get, I currently have tractor beam mine line in my ship. So you could follow behind me and get a face full of mines and get stopped while I fly away to heal, turn around, and blast you. My current preferred tactic actually works quite good until someone winds up and they start shooting the turret or the tractor mine, but they cloak and it makes it more difficult, but it does make it handy. I'm a fan of the cluster torpedoes because once they explode, even though it's a small initial damage, the cluster torpedoes launch a bunch of mines. Right click that info, it'll tell you probably exactly how many. It does not this time. It's probably about 5, maybe 4. But the damage on them is quite severe. It's not listed for some reason, but it's there. And it does make quite a bit of difference. There are specialty weapon damage like the biomolecular plasma cannons I have here, or the Tetron infused polar ion weapons, which give extra effects to your weapon damages that can proc occasionally. But so, going back to the different weapon types, you have the cannons which fire in the single cannons which more ships can equip, that fire in a smaller arc than the beam arrays, but cover completely front to back. So positioning is key. It only fires from left to right of your ship, always. So starts from the center and it goes 90 degrees each way. And then you got the dual cannons, and the dual heavy cannons have the smallest arc, which is 45 degrees in the front of your ship. So straight in front is 90. It does 45 degrees to the left and 45 degrees to the left, or to the right. Again, I prefer the dual heavy cannons. Escorts are very nice for that because they more often have very tight turn arcs. The tighter the turn arcs, the faster you can sight up onto targets and the more damage you do. If you're flying a science vessel or a cruiser, you might want to think about equipping more beam arrays, so you have a wider range of you can hit from. You can worry less about facing the target and more about being near the target and staying out of their front-facing weapons. The beam arrays, they do have 90 degrees. They have a slightly bigger than the dual cannons. That's the beam banks, excuse me. And they do pack a bit more punch. But you're trading off your zone of being able, your firing arc for more damage. I haven't had a real lot of luck with them. Most of the ships I fly, if I'm going to go with something that limited, I'll just go with the cannons and be done with it. And there's, quite a lot of options in cannon-wise. Do you really need the dual heavy cannons? Or could you do better with regular heavy cannons? That's to be debated. Or the dual cannons, excuse me. I really don't have an answer for you. The dual cannons do have a 1 second recharge, where the dual heavies have a 2 second. While they have a bigger um, burst damage, their DPS might be lower because they fire at half as fast. Where cannons and turrets both only have 1 second. I've never paid attention to the 4 max, you can see, but I'm guessing each cycle it'll fire 4 times maximum before it has to recharge. Which does make sense. That means the dual cannons here can fire twice before they need to recharge again. So even though it'll fire 2 shots, it'll fire 2 shots twice. Where the dual heavy cannons will fire 1 dual heavy shot, which is probably a little bit, and visually the shots are probably a little bigger. But that's that. I didn't have a lot prepared. I'm sorry. I'm a little new at this. I don't even think there's anyone on to ask questions, but that's okay. Just wanted to give you a rundown so you had some idea. Hopefully I answered some questions. Hopefully when you go decide which weapons you want to run with, you have a little bit better idea. I don't have a full selection here, but making do with it. I do have to give out a shout out to Popeye, who helped me get most of these anti-proton weapons, and Killian, I believe, is doing this. I'm sorry, this is terrible. I should have done this beforehand. Monster. Yes. Killaban. Killaban. Let's call out to him right now through the fleet chat. Better yet, I have a better idea. We will go to bridge invites. Okay. Just go. Right. I'm really derping this up now. It's okay. Still, a message. Housekeeping. So we've got also Damages also follow with over into weapons. I've got a plasma stun pistol thing. I've got the split beam rifle, which does pole-on damage. That also applies to ground weapons. They do very similar things. That's topic for another day. Generally, just wanted to get this overview. He doesn't seem to be answering, but he was also instrumental in making a lot of the beam arrays for me, and I am very grateful for that. So I wanted to give a shout out to Popeye and Killiban. So thank you both very much for your help. I hope I was slightly amusing and at least informative. Till next time, I am Len, also known as Ash Hunter 18.